Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Yes We Can podcast. Today, I have my daughter with me. She's sick. We've had everything under the sun this winter. And one of my very good friends, someone that I am extremely inspired by and has really helped me out the last few years, Anne Tobin is on to chat with us about her journey. How are you, Anne?
I'm good. I'm good.
Well,
I have a sick child over here too, so
yeah,
apologies if she comes and sits on my lap.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
Anne and
life.
our kids go to the same school and they're besties. They're actually Anne has two girls, I have two girls. Our older girls are literally days apart, and my middle and her youngest are days apart. They're almost 2 years apart. So we spend a lot of time together. um and yeah, so our relationship is really special. And the reason I brought her on today is to share her story because she is a cancer survivor times two. And really is an amazing person. And so I've invited her to come on and share her story, hopefully to inspire others and provide hope for others. So Anne, why don't you kind of get us started with
Oh
who
gosh.
you are or where you want to start?
um, wow. I mean, that's like telling 42 years of life and no, I'm
I
kidding.
know it's hard. It's like, where do we even, where,
Yeah,
maybe, where you're from.
sure.
Start from the beginning. Who are you? Where you're from? You know, your schooling, kind of your journey throughout to where we are today. I mean, it's a hard question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it I guess to go from here to there, if you were to ask me what my plan for my life was at 16 or even 20, my life did not go at all what I thought it uh, would be, and that's for the best. So I'll back up a little bit. I grew up in Michigan, actually. um, my Neither of my parents are from Michigan, but they met each other in Michigan. They're both from the East Coast. My mom's from Western New York, and my dad is from Philadelphia. And they got married and had my brother and then me. And we had a great childhood. Um, Lived in a pretty small town for most of well, we grew up in Detroit. I moved in when I was 4, and then we grew up in a town called Romeo, which is a really small town with a lot of um, apple orchards and peach orchards and fruit
Mm.
trees. And my mom grew up on a farm, and she and I used to go picking fruit all the time. I mean, the things that I think about now, like that I want to do with my kids, like, I mean, you can do it, but it's actually cheaper to buy strawberries at a grocery store than it is sometimes to go pick them. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of a very lovely childhood. I played outside almost all of my childhood. I laugh because both of my parents are super musically gifted, and my dad was a piano teacher and a trained pianist, and tried to get my brother and I to learn piano. I say that because I'm staring at the piano that both of our daughters are starting now.
Uh-huh.
And I would not sit still. My brother and I would not sit still, and my dad finally said, "Fine, if you don't want to learn
Forget it.
piano, don't." So I was like, "Great." And I left and I played outside, and that's all I did, like all my life. I didn't play a lot of organized sports, just childhood. Played in the woods, sledded. We had a pond in our neighborhood, so we ice skated. It was always frozen over. So great childhood. I moved in 8th grade to the Lansing area. That was a very tumultuous time in my life, um, and at a very awkward time of my life. So
Mhm.
I would say at that point, I started to realize that like life doesn't just work out the way that you think it's going to. But you grow, you move on. I graduated, went to University of Michigan for 4 years, moved to Chicago. It's actually where I met my husband, like on my very first job, very first location of my very first job, very second, maybe first or second day on the job. I met him and was not really looking for a boyfriend, but we got to know each other. And 6 months later, we started dating, and we've been married for 15 years now. So, which is awesome.
That's how it happens, right? When you
That's how
least
it
expect it,
happens.
they say.
Yeah, but let's see. So right after my second job, I had been at my second job for about a year. It was very stressful. And it was about that time that I started looking for another job. I had been there less than like a year, and I was like, I got to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we had just gotten engaged. My husband's name is Chris. You know Chris. We had just gotten engaged to be married in March. And I remember we were watching TV one day, and I just remember being like, huh, I feel a lump. And I thought, like, that's not been there before. And so, so backing up, my mom had breast cancer. She was 46 when she was diagnosed. The first go around, they didn't get it all. She didn't realize it until we actually moved. It was a blessing that we moved, even though I thought it was the worst thing ever, because she got better care, better doctors, and
So that's
survived.
when
She's
you
still
moved
surviving now in 8th
in
grade.
eighth
So she
grade.
was diagnosed when I was probably in 6th grade,
Okay.
and we were in a small town. They went to a small hospital. When we moved, I think our whole family realized the reason why God had taken us to that new place, because the doctor said, you still have breast cancer. So my mom went through a whole bunch of procedures and chemotherapy and everything. And I remember just being so in shock. Like when you see your mother and, like your father, your mother in a situation like that, you can't imagine what's going to happen. And I couldn't handle it. Like I would go to the hospital room and I would pretend like it wasn't happening. I'd just do my homework. I was in eighth or I guess ninth grade at that time. And so I guess there was part of me that there was some trauma there. And then I also felt like I knew it was going to happen to me. I just had a sense, but I didn't think it was going to happen that early. So I was 25 at the time, and I go in and everybody's like, oh honey, it's probably fibrous tissue, it's no big deal. And I even went into I couldn't get in. I mean, they couldn't even get me in at Northwestern because they're so busy and I was so young. And they thought, well, we can get you in 4 months. And I thought, I can't wait 4 months.
4 months.
So yeah, so thankfully a friend of ours was doing his rotations at University of Illinois at Chicago, and he was working with a surgical oncologist for breast cancer, and he got me in 2 weeks. And my first appointment, I remember the doctor saying, Dr. Warso, I loved him. You don't have to do this. This is painful. Like they were going to do a fine needle aspiration. We can just watch it if you want, and we'll just keep monitoring it. And I was like, no, I want it. I want to know. So they, at that time, I don't know if it's still the same. This was 2008. They did the fine needle aspiration. They ask you to come back into the office a week later for your results. They're not going to call or anything like that. So we were actually going to go to St. Louis for the weekend for a wedding. And I remember Chris saying, do you want me to come with you? And I was like, no, like they're just going to tell me that it's nothing. And we're going to leave, I'm going to come home tomorrow. We're going to leave and we're going to go to St. Louis. Like I was so set in my mind that it was not going to be anything. And then it turns out it was breast cancer. Now it was interductal, very early, stage 1A, like they recommended radiation with just a lumpectomy, which is what we opted to do, although I immediately said I would like to do a bilateral mastectomy, and they said no. At that time, it wasn't very common. And so did the lumpectomy. We tested our lymph nodes. Everything was good. I went on, I did 6 rounds of radiation. And when I completed that, I went on tamoxifen for 5 years, which was essentially a hormone blocker that's been known to proven to be successful in reducing the risks of recurrence of breast cancer. So during that time, so 25 years old, we weren't able to have kids. So fast forward, we got married. And then we decided we were just going to live it up. We're going to live in Chicago and we're going to have fun. We can't have children yet. So By the time
Well,
that 5 years
so
was, yeah,
real quick, just to back up,
yeah.
you found out you had breast cancer. They did a
Mhm.
lumpectomy. You were engaged at that time.
Yes.
Oh,
This is
look
Lucy.
who it is, Luce. Hi, sweet girl.
A little bit of bedhead, huh?
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
so sorry. A little distracted there. Go ahead.
So they did a lumpectomy. You guys were engaged or married at this point?
We were engaged. And I remember
Engaged.
saying to Chris, you can run the other direction if you'd like.
Oh
And
my gosh.
he
I
said,
just
no
got
way.
chills.
I'm in for it.
Oh,
I'm in for it. Little did he know what he was in for, but anyway.
you know. So
Yeah.
lumpectomy, you get married. So cancer free, like you did radiation.
Radiation, cancer free. Yeah, I mean, cancer free on the tamoxifen for 5 years,
Okay.
which has its own side effects. They were pretty minimal for me, but I do know many other patients where it's very horrible. So I think it depends on the patient. Um, and so, yeah, so then by the end of almost to the 5 years, I mean, I'm ready to have a family. And
Right.
so I'm pushing, and we knew we were going to move to St. Louis because Chris has a huge family here, which is such a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to St. Louis. I'm about to be off tamoxifen in November of that year. So this is July of 2013. We moved here, and I'm like, we're gonna have a family as soon as I get up this tamoxifen, like as if
Right.
it was within my plan. No, I mean, not happening, not happening, not happening, not happening.
Meaning
I finally saw
you're
trying, not getting pregnant.
trying, no
Yeah.
pregnancy. Okay.
And I know many people who have tried for much longer, but at
Right.
about 6 or 7 months of trying, I finally saw a fertility specialist. She put me on Clomid. That was not great for me. And then she ended up putting me on I think it's letrozole. And after the second try, we got pregnant, which was a huge blessing. So
Awesome.
my birthday's in September. It was such a gift from God. I got pregnant right around my birthday. And I remember it was before we got pregnant that I finally sort of like surrendered control. I remember I was sitting, reading my Bible and thinking like, oh my gosh, if it's not meant for me to have a kid, like we're just not going to have a kid. Like it's not up to me. I can do everything I want. We can
Mm-hmm.
do everything right. And then I got pregnant because, that's how it always happens. But within about I would say I was 12 weeks. I used to be a runner. I ran cross country and track. So we moved here. I was running and I went about 2 blocks and I about collapsed. I couldn't breathe. I mean, it's a very minimal hill. And I was like, okay, no running while pregnant. That's fine. But I was like, I couldn't like shake this sort of like I was having a little bit of shortness of breath.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having this pain that was radiating like around my rib cage. And so that it would come and go. So I was like, okay, no more running. So then I tried to swim.
Mm-hmm.
But then the pain would be so bad. And I would like double over in pain. It would come on really sharp and I would double over in pain. And then like I'd breathe it through and then it would go away. And then
And how
finally,
pregnant were you at this point?
just 12 weeks. Like this was not
But first,
like,
you're thinking maybe it's pregnancy. There's like stuff moving in there. Like it's normal.
I was like, I don't know. I've never been pregnant before. Maybe
Right.
this is what happens. People
Right.
do say that pregnancy can be really miserable. So like,
Yes.
maybe this is my
Correct.
fate as a pregnant woman. But
Right.
then it came on so hard. Of course, Chris, you can't make this stuff up. Chris had just started a new job, and 2 days into his new job, oh, I forgot to mention that I started my new job the week when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. I had been at my job for 1 week before getting diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay, so here we are again, 7 years later. Chris is at his new job. It's the second day. I'm in so much pain. He comes down. I'm like, I have to go to the ER. I don't know what's wrong with me. And he's like, I have to be at work. And so we're sitting here going, I'm like, just drop me off. Just drop me off at the ER. It'll be fine. And you can come get me whenever you're done, or I'll just give you updates. So I'm there all day. I'm pregnant. They don't want to do x-ray. They don't want to do CT scan because there's a risk to the baby. So they discharged me with like heart. I don't even remember what it was. It was like chest pain is what they discharged me with. And Chris was like, great, nothing's wrong with you. You just have some chest pain. I'm like, since when is chest pain like nothing? So
Are you,
I
were
know
you,
that there's something wrong with me.
that's what I was going to say. Intuition, right?
Oh, my body was not right. But again, pregnancy, like, I don't know. So
Right.
it it kind of like resolved for a little bit. And this was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I was kind of like, I don't know, doing something around the house. I remember I finally got to the point where I was like, ooh, let's think about what the baby needs. And the pain came on so intensely, I like doubled over in pain. I blacked out. I could not sit, I could not stand. I could barely breathe. And I was so freaked out. And Chris was just sitting there going, nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong with you. And I'm like, something's wrong with me. But I couldn't get the words out. So Thanksgiving happens. I'm in so much pain. Like, I have all these lidocaine patches because that's what they sent me home with because I was having all this chest pain, which obviously was not the right thing. But, like, how do you know? So I don't go to Thanksgiving. And Chris comes home, brings me Thanksgiving dinner. And his stepdad lost his wife to melanoma. And I just remember Chris coming home saying, I'm sorry. I talked to Jamie and he was like, Chris, if she's telling you something's wrong, there's something wrong. You need to take her to the hospital. So the next day, we're supposed to have family pictures. My sister-in-law's in town from Charleston with her family, Chris's brother and his family. And she's an anesthesiologist. She takes one look at me and is like, you have to go to the ER right now, like right after this. So I go, I mean, I can barely make it into the parking lot. They immediately hook me up, check for a heart attack and blockages. And then I wait, and then they wheel me in. They do the CT scan. They wheel me out. They wheel me back in again. They wheel me out. And then the ER doctor comes in and says, we need to put you in the hospital tonight. You have a mass, but we can't tell what it is because there's so much fluid that we have to drain the fluid first to figure out what the mass is, what it looks like. So they had to put a chest tube in, drain, which was incredibly painful for anybody who's had a chest tube. And they drained a 2-liter of blood from my chest. Turns out I had synovial cell sarcoma, which we didn't find out until a couple days later. But it is a very rare form of sarcoma. And I had a 12-centimeter tumor, which had collapsed my lung, which is why I was having so much pain.
Oh
And why I wasn't able to like make it in from the parking lot because I was just like barely breathing. And so, I mean, just so many gifts being in that hospital. We were hooked up with the head of the high risk OB department came in and introduced herself to us and said, we've done this before. We're going to do this. Like, we got you. We did an ultrasound, found out a high risk OB because I was pregnant. Yeah. Right. So at this point I was 14. I was 14 months. And so they did 14 weeks. And so they did an ultrasound and we found out it was a boy, which was just awesome, just awesome. So, then everything happened really fast. My oncologist at MOBAT called and said, I know absolutely nothing about this. Like, he was very honest, but he was like, the great news is that one of the best sarcoma doctors is here at Siteman Cancer Center, Brian Van Tine. And so we're going to set you up with an appointment there. So I called, set up an appointment. I was supposed to go in on Friday. I got diagnosed on a Thursday over the phone, and then I was supposed to go in on Friday to see them at Siteman. And Dr. Van Tine called me that night on my cell phone, introduced himself, and said, we're going to take care of you. Pack your bags. You're staying. We're starting chemo this weekend. So everything happened very fast after that. I mean, it was like, get, in the hospital, I had to get my port put in, started chemotherapy that night that I got put in the hospital. And my chemotherapy was like 10 hours a day for 3 days in a row.
While pregnant, and they're thinking this isn't going to harm the baby.
Well, after Chris told me this after I got my next good scan. But so what's very interesting about Dr. Van Tine is during his fellowship, he had a very similar situation with synovial cell sarcoma. I believe it was synovial cell sarcoma. But the woman that he was caring for, she was pregnant, she was further along, but her cancer was so progressed that she ended up passing away, but they saved the baby. And so I think he saw my case and thought, I got to do this. And
I can save them both. We can save them both.
Well, he said to Chris when I was out of the room that first meeting, we're going to save one of them, at least one of them. I don't know which one it is.
Oh my goodness,
And
Anne.
Chris said, it needs to be my wife. And he said, we're going to try. But I have to let you know that the chemotherapy we're giving her is very strong. And one of them has not been tested to be safe with pregnancy. And Chris said that, we both said we got to do what we got to do. So it was the baby was doing fine. We went to our 20-week, the chemo was horrible. I mean, I could go into detail about all that, but from your experience of what it does to your body. And I mean, I had every drug under the sun to take care of every side effect from chemotherapy, of course, lost all my hair. I don't know how people do this with children because I had no children at the time. Now I was pregnant for a period of it. But at 20 weeks, we had our 20-week ultrasound. And so when you go into an ultrasound and you can just tell that something's not right. I remember looking at the ultrasound picture and thinking like, it looks different. And I remember thinking to myself, I feel smaller. But the baby still had a heartbeat and everything was there. It's just that what ended up happening, she left the room. I looked at Chris and I said, this isn't good news. He's like, this is definitely not good news. So the doctor came in and he said, there's no more fluid around the baby. So, you have a fluid-filled sac. It protects the baby. At 20 weeks, the baby is still swallowing that fluid to be able to develop its lungs. And its lungs aren't fully developed. Well, I don't even know fully developed. I'm not a doctor or anything, but until at least 23 weeks. And so I'm thinking, I'm the eternal optimist. Like, so can you put the fluid back in there?
Right.
And the doctor's like,
where's the fluid? Let's bring some more in.
Like, where's the fluid? Where'd it go? And he's like, no, we can't do that. We can see if the baby learns how to do it on its own, but we're going to give it a couple of days. And in 2 days, if the baby's still alive, we're going to have to make a decision. Oh, and man. I was like, I can't make that decision about my baby. I mean, and he did say, he was like, if this baby goes to full term, or even if we take it early, if it's not able to swallow the fluid, the child's going to have no quality of life. It won't be able to breathe on its own. So I'm thinking like, I can't make this decision. So I'm a mess. I'm a mess. I think Chris went to work. I don't know how he went to work. And I was here by myself. And I was talking to one of my really close friends that still lives in Chicago, Kelly. And she's like, Anne, you need to just go for a walk. Just get out of the house. You need to change your scenery. This was in January. Yeah. So of course it was like freezing cold. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you really can't make this stuff up because God is so good. But the day before that, I was at my monthly Bible study and we were talking about stopping to smell the flowers, essentially. Like, our Bible study leader, Sue, she's amazing. She's like, girls, get off your phones and start enjoying life. Enjoy your family. Slow down. Take a moment. And her daughter was in the Bible study, was telling a story about how her son, who was still young at the time, basically was like, Mom, look outside. It's so beautiful. The sun looks so beautiful. And she was like, I was in the middle of like 6 things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? He's not going to be young forever. He's not going to love this forever. So I'm going to go look. And she was like, it was the most beautiful sunset I've literally ever seen. Yeah. And, sometimes in St. Louis, it's like that, especially in the cold weather. You get that beautiful, like purple and pink and orange. And I just remember thinking that. So I went for a walk just beside myself, not like, I think it was the first time I stopped crying because otherwise my tears would freeze to my face. And I got to like 3 blocks from my house and I looked and the sun was setting and it was the most incredible sunset I've ever seen in my life. And I just thought, okay, God, you're in this. Like, I know you're in this. And I finished my walk. I didn't see a single soul except for one person. And it was my original OB.
Oh,
Um,
seriously.
and the one that she handed me off to the high risk doctors when I was diagnosed. She was wonderful. She was taking her daughter into a dance class, but
Yeah.
she's the only person I saw. And I came back home, and about half an hour after I got home, I started feeling really sick, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So of course, the next day I go to the anytime you're feeling sick with chemo, you have to go into the cancer center. So I'm in the cancer center. They're doing all the tests, checking my neutrophils, and like all that stuff. I'm there all day, and finally the doctor comes in and says, "We're going to send you down to triage." And I knew after they were doing all the tests, like, this is what this is. So I get down there and they get me a room and the woman is like quiet. And I was like, you can tell me. I have a feeling I know what it is. She's like, well, do you want to get your husband on the phone? And I was like, yeah, I probably should do that. So at that point, we found out that the baby had passed, which was
Oh, Anne.
so bittersweet in so many different ways because we didn't want to have to make that decision of
Right.
terminating the pregnancy. This gift of God that I had, been praying for, we had both been praying for so long, was here. And then it was like, as quickly as it was here, it was taken from me. And I couldn't reconcile it at first. Obviously, there's so many feelings. I remember just having the DNC and just like, I hit that button for numbness as many times as I could. I was so honestly drugged out that morning that I woke up that they were actually going to do the procedure because they had to give me contractions that whole night. So you're preparing for pregnancy that you're never going to have, which is horrible. And they were like, do you want to be awake for the DN, when we take the baby? And I said, no, I don't. I can't unsee that. This baby is an angel. I just can't. So I didn't, but that my oncologist came in while I was there after the DNC and I was recovering and he said, you need some good news today. And I was supposed to have my next scan a week later. And he said, we're going to take you in and get your scan in today. And I was like, I hope you're right. He goes, me too. And we got the results back and he came back. I had a 12 centimeter tumor at this point after I think it was 2 rounds of chemo. It was already down to 7 centimeters. They couldn't perform surgery to remove it because it was so big without shrinking it. And so he was like, the chemo's working. Like, this is going to work. This is going to happen. And I just, Chris, this was when he was flooding with tears. And of course, he's trying to be strong for us. You feel like you're in control a little bit when you're the one that's going through it. And for him, he's just so helpless. And then it was then that he told me what the doctor had said. And he, it's like, okay, I know that we didn't save the baby. So we're saving you. Like, this is what's happening. And so, yeah, so from there, it just, I went 6 rounds. And by the 6th round, it was just, blood transfusions after blood transfusions every time because you're just so depleted. And then after that, I waited and had proton therapy radiation because it was, so what's interesting and what we don't fully know is that the breast cancer I had was on my left side and the sarcoma I had was on the left side in the same area where the radiation was from my breast cancer.
Interesting.
So it's possible that the radiation could have disturbed healthy cells and caused the sarcoma. They're not linked genetically. I did a bunch of genetic testing, so we don't really know. It's all part of my faith journey. So I'm assured that that's it's just part of my story. Right. But anyway, so went through the proton therapy, my hair started growing back, I started feeling better, and then they had to do a thoracotomy, which is awful. There are no words to explain how horrible it is. They go through the back of they go through your back and they have to break your ribs to get to the front to remove the tumor. So they had to take out a third of my lung and then they cleared the margins around my tumor, removed it. And then because of all the radiation I had, unbeknownst to me, they staple that tissue up. So now I forgot to mention this, but 2 years after my breast cancer, they saw something else. I ended up having a bilateral mastectomy. So I have a bilateral mastectomy. So I've had a lot of surgery here. I've had a lot of radiation, like 11 rounds on this side. So they went in through my back. So what happened was when they stapled my lung back together, it was like they explained it after the fact, like wet paper towel. Like it's like stapling wet paper towel. Like there's just no integrity to that tissue. So so I was in the hospital for a week recovering, and then a couple days after I got home from the hospital, I would lay down, and then like blood would come up, like through my throat. And my parents were here. I remember being like, "Mom, I can't sleep. Like I can't lay down to sleep." She's like, "Okay, well maybe just put the pillow behind you." I was like, "But I feel like this is not good. Like whatever's happening, this is
Isn't
not good."
supposed to be happening.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I call and they're like, "You got to come back in." So then they do, I don't know if they did an X-ray CT. They're like, "Okay, well what happened was your lung reopened again. So your lung has reopened to the space now where they took out the tumor, which is now just like empty space, sort of. They reconstructed my diaphragm, which was mostly wrecked because of the tumor. So there's all this empty space with a lot of fluid, and the fluid is basically now open to my everything, which is very dangerous because obviously you can get germs in there and it can cause really big problems. So they admitted me to the hospital, and this was the point. You would think I had gotten there before, right? Cancer, mastectomy, cancer again, chemo, blah, 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 losing a baby.
Losing a baby, yes.
It was this moment where I looked at Chris and I was like, I can't do this. I cannot do another thoracotomy. I absolutely cannot do it. And he looked at me and was like, held my hands, like my head in my hands. He was like, you are doing this. Like, you have to do this. There's no other option. And I just remember like everyone praying for me. They were like, why, God, why? Like, so much. Like, why can't you just have a break? That's how I felt too. So they ended up taking my latissimus muscle, the muscle that makes your body like a V on top, like bodybuilders have that. They took the whole thing, swung it over, sewed it to my lung. So now it's part of my lung, removed. So now I only have a third left. So they removed more of the lung to get more integrity, attached my latissimus muscle, closed me back up again. I recovered for another week, then came home, couldn't go to the bathroom, started throwing up, had to go back to the hospital because of the pain meds. All the things, like, I mean, as cancer patients understand and know and have lived through. So, and then miracle upon miracles, I've been cancer-free ever since.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I went on to have 2 healthy pregnancies. As you saw, Lucy's my youngest. She is 5, and Molly is 7. And they are just gifts. They are such gifts from God. I don't even know what to say about that. I laugh a lot when I think about parenting, because I remember when I was at Michigan and my parents were like, you need to pick a major. And I was like, I just want to get married and have kids. My parents were like, that's not a major. Like, you have to find something to do. Like, know. And it was just like the desire of my heart always to have kids. And gosh, how long it took. We were married 8 years before we could even start having kids. And then we lost, it's like this story. But gosh, the goodness in it all. Like, when you go through something like that, as you know, you start to look at everything differently. Your perspective on everything changes. And you understand what it means when people say you need to slow down. You go, yep, there's peace in the slowdown. That's where God is. Like, that's what I need to be doing. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just a long story of my story.
It's beautiful and heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And I've heard it.
Yeah.
But not to the detail that you've just described.
Yeah.
And, our perspective's different because ours, meaning my family, me, being, on my husband's side. So I I totally relate and can understand and empathize having to go back into the hospital because something goes wrong,
Mm,
and blood transfusions because you don't have enough blood in your system to continue to be alive. And that's why
yeah.
blood donations are so incredibly important.
Huge.
Blood
Huge.
donations, we are constantly short on blood. Um, we don't need to to go into that, but like
Yeah.
that's a whole nother, like
Yeah.
I just, your story is amazing, and being your friend to this day, I feel incredibly blessed and thankful to have you in our life and my life. And you would never know. You would never know
No, not
the
now.
the hurricane, the disaster, the up and down, the trials and tribulations, and I mean, why don't you tell everybody, and why? What has helped you through? What's your foundation, right? Like
Oh
what keeps
gosh.
you.
Yeah. Well, we know my foundation is God. I mean, but that has been, I was raised in church. And there, it was just always part of our everyday,
Mhm,
but it wasn't, it really wasn't. I mean, and I had plenty of time to question it when I went, even when we moved. I mean, I had a lot of friends with different religions.
mhm,
We, Michigan, I mean, gosh, like half of my friends were Jewish. There was
mhm,
a lot of time that I kind of wondered, but every time I would find myself back at a church service, I would just be bawling. And I thought, like, oh, I can't go back there again. Like,
mhm.
that was
Yeah.
embarrassing. But it's just always been a part of me because when I was young, I accepted Jesus, and he's been with me ever since. And so, part of the walk with the Lord is he has to he has to do some surgery on your own heart. And I would not I would not have the faith and understanding and desire after his path for me had I not gone through these things. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go through horrific things to follow
Mhm,
Jesus. Like that's just my path. But
mhm,
absolutely, he's my rock. And so um I realized that like all of this, like this testimony that I'm sharing, it's not really for me because what it did was it gave me purpose. Like I'm still
mhm,
here. There are a lot of people that aren't. That God could have taken me home at any point in time during that situation, and He did. I mean, my doctor says about our pregnancy, he was like, that baby saved your life. Because with sarcoma, you don't usually have symptoms until it's already metastasized in your body. And at that point, it's really oftentimes too late. But it was still a solid mass. It had not metastasized. That baby had given me enough signals and signs to say something's wrong, go get it checked out. And so, it's a unique. Chris always says that the monks that he grew up with, he went to Priory here in St. Louis, that they used to say, God writes straight with crooked lines. And it's so true. It's true about our story.
mhm,
And now instead of getting mad or angry when things don't go well, I'm like, what are you doing? Or what is it that I need to be aware of? Like, where am I just on autopilot? Where
mhm,
am I not paying attention? Or
mhm,
um, what is holding me back from being the person that you want me to be, being the light in the world? And it's so going back to just it's given me a purpose. After I was diagnosed, I re- after I had breast cancer, I remember going to all these like cancer things and being like, I feel like total fraud because all these people are talking about losing their hair and all this stuff, and I was like, I kind of feel like I had it easy, Well, then of course God gave me another chance to have it hard, and not that that makes it sound horrible, but um, at that point it was like I can relate to most anyone going through this, going through a cancer journey, regardless of what their story is. And so then I was like, I need to do this. Is clearly my purpose here. Like I need, besides work, right? Like I'm working to make a living, but not working because I have passion for it. Um, so I immediately started working or volunteering at Siteman. I was at what they call the PFAC, Patient Family Advocacy Committee. And I did that for 2 years. And that was really fascinating because they have physicians that sit in on the board, and they have staff that sit on the board. And essentially their whole goal is, what is the patient experience and how do we make our cancer center better? You know, what does it look like when you come in to get your blood drawn? What is it like at the pods? What is it like when you first get diagnosed and you know, like, how do you know where to go? Did you have good navigation? Did you all that? And that was so awesome. And I loved the people that I met through there. And I did that for 2 years. But at that point, I felt like God is calling me to a faith-based purpose with my cancer. And so I became a Stephen minister through my church. And that is, for those who don't know what that is, it is this awesome organization that was actually started by Dr. Kenneth Hauk, who lost his wife to cancer. And at that time that he was grieving and dealing with it, he's a psychologist. He remembered being like, the church didn't have the resources to help me through this. Now, that doesn't mean the church is wrong. It's just that, you know, they've got deacons that help with practical things. And then they've got, you know, teaching elders that teach the word of God, which is awesome. But he felt like the ministry of like cares was missing. And so he started this organization, this ministry called Stephen Ministry. And it is, I mean, I've been to churches in Florida and I've seen it. Like, it's
called Stephen Ministry?
Stephen, like Stephen in the Bible, the one who was the first martyr in the Bible. And it's layperson caring. So you're trained, I mean, the training is about 6 months long. And you are not fixing anyone's problem. You are going in as like the ears and eyes and, you know, hands and feet of Jesus, and just listening, letting them process out loud. You know, if it becomes something that is more complicated, that you need to pass them off to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you know, and a lot of times people are doing that in tandem with walking with you, but you're just another resource that prays over them and is with them in storm, you know, and that has just been such a gift to me, like just being a part of that organization, understanding that everybody goes through struggles. It just all looks different. And that the hope of the Lord and the hope of Jesus being in that place with you is real, and having somebody go alongside you and remind you of that while you're going through it it's just like, it's sacred ground. It really is. And so that's been a huge gift to me. And I'm also like, anyone knows that if anyone knows that I've gone through cancer, they're reaching out to me if they've got a cousin or a friend or whatever, and I'll talk to anybody on the phone. So hear this, like, if you just got diagnosed with cancer, Kira can give you my number. Yeah, it just, you just need somebody to talk through it with, and it not be your spouse, or it not be your kids or whoever, because it wears on them too. They're experiencing that burden themselves. This is somebody who can come in completely free of the baggage and accept some of the burden for you and pray over you and be present with you. You know, so that's been, yeah, I mean, it's my foundation. It's my purpose for living. Like,
amazing. And it's a great example of turning pain into purpose, which is the whole premise of this podcast, is to show that a lot of things happen to a lot of people, and your story is incredible. And the fact that, you know, you're happy every day. I mean, you know, you enjoy life. You are a positive person. And not to say that regular trials and tribulations don't happen to you and your family still. I mean, we've got sick kids, you've got a sick kid, you know, and life isn't perfect, but just to, you know, hear more your story in depth, and to know you and be blessed to be your friends with you, to, you know, a dear friend of yours. It's amazing. I mean, you are amazing. And thank you for sharing your story, and for being open to coming on this podcast and sharing with all the people listening. And for continuing to turn your pain into purpose, you know, because you surely are changing people's lives, you know, for the better, which you and I have talked long and hard about this. This is what we
Yeah.
feel like we're called to do.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you that story for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he gave us this story for a reason. So thank you, Anne, for coming on.
Gosh.
And
thank you.
I
I'm so blessed to know you. I obviously have gone through the other end of it, and just to watch you, I mean, I never met Kyle, which I can't believe sometimes because we've known each other for just about as long as you've been going through widowhood. But watching you just be so intentional and purposeful with your kids, instilling the faith in them and using your platform for good, for raising millions of dollars for cancer research so that people don't have to go through this again. And you've come up against a lot of roadblocks, and you just you persevere. And that's because like you have a bigger God on your side that's telling you where to go and what to do and what to pursue. And so come hell or high water, you're doing it. And it is so inspirational to watch you. And I just love your kids, and I love being with you. And yeah, so thank you.
Well, thank you. We love you guys. And thank you for saying that. Again, we all have a purpose, right? And sometimes it's really ugly to get there and to find it. But I think you and I are together in this, that we have found it. And we feel like sharing our story and continuing to hopefully change the lives of others in a positive manner is our purpose. And, so one foot in front of the other. I know that's what I do every day, and you too. So thank you again. And if anybody wants to reach out to her, like you said, please send me a message. I can connect you to any other parting words or thoughts or anything you want to leave with the listeners today, Anne.
We're in the Christmas season right now, so I just feel like everybody's so hurried. But I had a moment yesterday. I feel like it was the first time that I really truly rested because I have a sick child at home. And it's that shift in perspective to go, okay, what I had on my to-do list today, none of that's happening. So what do I get to do instead? I get to be a mom. I get to take care of my darling Lucy. And I get to I laid on the couch yesterday and I just talked to God and I just prayed, and then I kind of fell asleep, and then I talked to God and I prayed and I read my Bible and I fell asleep, and it was the most beautiful day. And I would have 5 years ago, I would have been mad. I have so much to do, So my parting words are, you can afford to slow down, and you can afford to say no to things, and you can afford to spend time with your family, because that is why you're here. You are here to spend time with people that you love. Someone told me once, I'm sure people have heard this before, but like there are two things that are eternal: the Word of God and relationships. So if you're putting your time into either of those things, it's worthy time. So that's my parting gift, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, I love you so much, Anne.
I love you.
Thank you for being a part of our life. Thank you for coming on the show. I'll probably call you later.
Can't wait. We'll see each other. Well, we probably won't see each other because you're leaving for Christmas vacation, but yeah.
We are. We'll see. Well, especially with the kids too, but I'll call you.
Yeah. Cora, babe, I hope you feel better. You're looking good.
Yeah, we're working on it. And Lucy too, and let's hope the others don't get it.
I know.
Any of the illnesses. Praying. Thank you to all of those who are here listening to the Yes We Can podcast. Again, please like, follow, subscribe, send to your family and friends. We love having you. Again, this episode, I do want to remind you, is sponsored by the Diamond Family, a beautiful jewelry store on Manchester Road and in Manchester. Please go to their website, go to their store if you have any gifts that you have yet to buy for Christmas or any of the holidays you're celebrating. Please go visit them. Again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Okay. Bye, Anne. Love you.
Love you too.